All right, so this is the stuff we're gonna need for the install. We are going to need a flat blade screwdriver, 7mm socket, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, and a drive attachment, a T30 Torx, center punch, masking tape, a drill, a rivet gun, plastic cutting saw or tin snips will work, small C-clamps, and glass cleaner. All right, so the car is up in the air, as I said. We've got it secured with jack stands. We are going to pull off the negative battery terminal. All right, negative terminal's off. Now, the beginning of my install is gonna be a little bit different if you have the factory air box on there. What we're gonna do is basically pretty similar. I just have this hose clamp down here and this tube I have to pull off, and then it will release from the factory air bridge. It's factory all the way up to here, so it's not that different, but this first part is gonna be a little bit different than if you had an OEM air box. All right, the old intake is out. All right, now we're just gonna remove these clamps. That one's already loosened. We're gonna just remove the two clamps that are holding the mass airflow sensor that's sandwiched in right here. So that one we already got off. All right, we need to remove this clamp right here. All right, there's that. The mass airflow sensor is off. Now we're gonna use our T30 Torx to remove these two bumper beams down here. All right, those bolts are out of the way. Now we're just gonna, thing that's attached to down here, pull it out of there. All right, we gotta pull that out of there. Mass airflow sensor, whole thing that holds that. And now we're just gonna clean this because it's awfully dirty. We're gonna clean this radiator shroud up because we actually have to adhere some tape to that. All right, now we're just gonna remove these little rubber grommets from the old air bridge. And all you have to really do is just push it through one side and it'll go through. All right, there it is. There's one, and here's the other. Now we're just gonna put those grommets into the honker. The side with these things on them. This side is up, smooth side down. So they're gonna sit like this. And there's the last one. Both the grommets are in. All right, so now we're gonna install the mass airflow sensor into the elbow and then the new air bridge. Now, important thing to note here, there's flow direction. There's an arrow pointing which way it should go. And on this elbow here, there's a little lug that lines up with that lug right there. So those have to go on together. And this is where you can use that glass cleaner, that Windex. You can use that now to help make it a little easier. Just like that. Now we're gonna tighten that clamp down. And then we're gonna put this one on the back like this. Oh, there it is. Now we're gonna take our honker assembly, remove these two thumb screws here. All right. Then 3 and 4. All 4 of these thumb screws, they're coming out. And we're just gonna pull this air filter element out of here. And then put this back in. Snug back in these thumb screws here. All right, so now we're gonna take our honker assembly and we're gonna put our bellow, our air bridge, our hose onto there. We're gonna attach that to there. And now we're gonna tighten everything up, including all these clamps. And if I didn't mention it already, all the clamps for the hoses are gonna be face down. So it'll look like that. All right, all of our clamps are tightened on here. So now we're gonna fit the intake into place. We're gonna put the grommets down on those posts there. I got that elbow under the throttle body, fully seated down there. All right, that's down there, and that's down there. Okay, now what we're gonna do, with the intake all set as it is, where it would normally be on the car, make sure that is tight up against the throttle body. What we're gonna do is, using the masking tape, we're gonna put the tape along the side here, and on the top. We're going to basically trace the outside of the Honker intake on the radiator shroud using masking tape. All right, so we've got the masking tape laid around the intake like so. Now it's important to make sure that your tape is adhering to the radiator shroud. That's why we cleaned it in the first place. Now it's time to remove the clamp on the throttle body, and we might have to loosen one of these so that we can take this out. We're gonna remove it from the mounting pins. We're taking the intake out. All right, we're off the throttle body, we're off the mounting pins. The intake is out. All right, so now it's time to remove the radiator shroud. So first things first, we're gonna remove the 4 10mm bolts, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side of the top of the radiator cover. Now if we move this out of the way, should be able to move this cover, pull it right up. There we go. I'm gonna go get it loose from the other side now because I don't wanna mess up where we laid the tape. All right. Radiator cover's off. But right now we're gonna remove the under hood light right down there, the connector. We're gonna remove that from the actual radiator shroud. You guys can see it right down here. It's easier to get to from the front of the car. Just gonna reach down and it'll just pop off like that. All right, that's disconnected like so, just like that. There's the connector. We pulled it out of there. Now we have to unplug the ambient temperature sensor. Now that's that little blue connector all the way down there. We have to unplug that. It's in the same area that the hood light connector was right there, just much further down below. Now it's gonna be a little hard for me to capture how I'm gonna do this. See, we're just gonna lift up on that part right there, push really hard and slide it off the back. Come on now. There it goes, just like that. All right, next up, we gotta remove these metal retaining clips. See them right here. If we move the underhood light out of the way, right there, we have to remove those metal retaining clips from those plastic retainers. There's one down there, and there's the other one right down there. So all we're gonna do, I'm thinking, is take a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, and slowly pry that, and it should thread off the plastic retainer. If you haven't yet jacked up the car, now is the time. Get the front off the ground, make sure it's nice and secure, and now we're going underneath. All right, now we're under the car, and on our to-do list while we're under the car is remove these 5 7mm screws that are holding the radiator shroud to the actual nose. All right, now that those are out, the last 2 bolts we need, one is right there, and the other one, if you tilt the air dam back, you can see it. It's right there. Those 2 on the lower inner of the radiator shroud, those are gonna come out now. And those are also a 7mm. Looks like it might be easiest to use an extension here and go under through this side and go through that way. All right, so now that's all unbolted. Now we can actually go ahead and carefully remove the radiator shroud, taking extra caution that we don't pull our tape off. And what am I stuck on? Oh, nothing. There we go. And I lost all of the tape, just as I said not to do.
The next day.
All right, so it is a new day now because as you guys saw, when I took the radiator shroud out, all of the tape that I put on, most of the tape, peeled right off. It got stuck on something. So I have my setup here. It's all ready to go. What I did do was remove the base part from the intake that's over there, just so I could see how it sits and how it lined up. And so you can see when we take our template here and lay it out, you'll see that the template should go to the edges around here. The template should go right to the edge of the tape. And this line that you're seeing here, that is this line right here. All right, so we got the template nicely lined up here. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and tape the template down in place. Make sure the tape sticks this time. All right, now we're gonna use our center punch to punch out all the spots that are supposed to get punched out. Now we're gonna open up the small parts kit, little box that they gave us. So we have our number 4 drill bit that they supplied for us. So now we're gonna drill through these 12 outer marks. All right, now we need our 1/2-inch drill bit, and that's the one that we're gonna use to drill through the 4 inner circles here. All right, so now we're gonna trim the opening for the airbox base. That's this line here. And you can either use snips for this, but these things are great for cutting plastic. Very, very easy. So we're gonna start on this side. All right, now I took the template off. We have our hole here. With the help of my brother, we clamped the base here onto the top side of the shroud. So we have the filter base here aligned with the opening we just cut out. I ended up using 4 clamps to make sure this thing didn't go anywhere when I was drilling. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our drill that still has the number 4 provided drill bit on it. And what we're gonna do is drill through the bottom side of the shroud through our holes that we drilled. You can see them all here, but be careful because you don't want to drill all the way through this. So you want to drill into this, but not through it. So now what we're going to do is put the rivets in, the supplied rivets. So we're just going to take these, put them in the slots, but we're not going to clinch them down or anything yet. We're going to put all 12 of them in. Once everything's perfect in and aligned, then we're going to clench them down. And once we're sure that everything's in and aligned, we can now clinch down all of the rivets. Now all the rivets are in, it's nice and secure. Now we can go ahead and remove all the clamps. So our next step is actually blowing out anything that's in here. Now we already did that a little while ago. I'm gonna do it one more time to make sure it's all nice and clean in there. Now we put the shroud back in place. And down below, we're going to want to make sure that these little tabs are on the inside of the bolt holes. You'll see when I show you in just a second. That will go down below and line it up. And down below here, we just want to make sure that these are all lined up. I'm going to move it around a little bit. There we go. Need all those to line up. And as I mentioned earlier, we want this on the inside. Naturally, it wants to go on the outside. Same thing on this side. That one's already lining up pretty well. Now we gotta make sure we push the shroud back onto the plastic retaining clips. And then once those are lined up, we can put back on our metal retaining clip. And now we can put the under hood light clip. We can put that back onto its connector right there. Listen for the satisfying click. And back underneath the car, we can plug back in the ambient air temperature sensor. All right, we got the ambient air temperature switch back plugged in. We've got the hood light connector plugged back in. And now back underneath the car, we can now install the 5 screws that go across the nose and those 2 pesky ones that are hiding behind the air dam. Now, we're not gonna tighten these ones all the way quite yet. We're gonna wait to do that until we have the honker assembly actually installed. But for now, we're just gonna install all these screws. Just don't snug them up yet. And now we're putting the radiator cover back in the car and bolting it down with the 4 bolts. All right, so now we're gonna put the filter down into the filter base. You'll see there's a little lip here. It goes right in there. Beautiful. And now we're going to slide on the airbox cover. You'll see the pins at the front that this has to slide onto. Make sure it's going on evenly. And then we can tighten down our thumb screws. We also want to make sure that the intake is down on those pins, the mounting pins. All right, and now we just have to put on the bellows here. Slide it onto the airbox cover first. All right, the tube going to the airbox cover is slid all the way up. Now we can go ahead and tighten that down. And you just want to make sure that the bellows back here is secured as far as it can go on the throttle body. You don't want any leaks here. You just want to make sure that it's as far back as it can go onto the throttle body, nice and sealed. And now we're going to go ahead and tighten all these clamps up. All right, now we can go underneath the car and actually snug down the 5 bolts that go across the nose and the 2 7mm bolts up there that are hiding behind the air dam. All right, now we can plug back in our mass airflow sensor. Right, now, one of the last things, they give you this small zip tie. And the point of that is to take all your excess mass airflow sensor wiring, which used to plug in up here on this little shroud. And what we're gonna do is zip tie it together, shorten it, and put it back here under the left-hand fuel rail cover. Now we're just putting back on our negative battery terminal. Battery's back on and tightened. Now the last step before we put the Vette back on the ground is putting on the Callaway carb decal, because this is a 50-state legal intake. So I cleaned up this area right here, and that's where the decal is gonna sit. The Vette is on the ground. Everything is done. Everything's tightened up in the engine compartment. All right, so now we're in the Vette and we're gonna do what's known as the idle relearn procedure. First things first, ignition to on. Next, we're removing the engine fuse box cover here. Now we're gonna remove the fuses, the 2 10-amp fuses from spots 16 down there and 23. All right, 16 is this one and 23 is this one. Now in the Vette, we should be getting some, yep, we're getting some alerts. So now we turn the key to off. We put both of those fuses back where they came from. Now we can put this cover back on. We can now start the engine. Now, for those of you who are curious, the check engine light was there before I installed the intake. We need the Vette to get to 176-degree coolant temp at a minimum, and let it run at that minimum 176-degree temp for 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes is up. We can shut her down. Now, just like the Thanksgiving turkey, we let it rest for 30 seconds. 30 seconds is up. We can fire it up. For now, let's hear what this thing sounds like in comparison to the whatever intake I had in before it.